Well, coming up on show 8:05, BMW is ready to start production of the iX3. And if you stick around, I'll give you more details. Also on the podcast today, the strange story of the Model Y today. Some saying that Tesla are having trouble scaling it, others saying that demand is weak. We'll dig into what the truth really is. Lordstown Motors unveiling the Endurance truck next month. GM CEO saying that EVs are going to take decades. Okay. And a real-world test of Tesla's V3 superchargers from someone that I do trust and knows what he's talking about. Those stories and many more coming up on the show today. Busy, packed show, so let's crack on. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're listening around the world. Welcome to EV News Daily, the edition for Wednesday, 10th of June. My name is Martyn Lee, going through every EV story, so you don't have to. Let's start with the Model Y then. This is a strange one today. Model Y went into production before the pandemic, just before pandemic forced not only Tesla but other automakers to shut down their production lines. Tesla in Fremont had to close down what they'd just started. Now the factory is back to work. Tesla wants to ramp Model Y production as well, but not everything going to plan, and Elon Musk is again taking to the factory floor to see if he can fix problems for himself. We don't know whether he's sleeping on a sofa at the offices, though. According to Jalopnik, it's always unclear whether Elon taking to the factory floor actually does help or hinder things. I mean, it can be distracting if you're trying to focus on your job and all of a sudden the billionaire CEO walks past and is watching you do your job. But whether it's a publicity stunt or maybe Elon is bored, they speculate. I doubt that. These kind of factory tours do come and go. Production always rolls on. It does, I would say, my input on this would be it focuses the minds somewhat. If Elon is walking around the factory floor, I don't know whether you do your job to 100% every single day, but, you know, I think that would probably, it's a superhuman effort, and most people do their job at maybe, I don't know, 90, 95%, some people less. You and I both know those people that do it at 50%. But you know what I mean? You've always got a little bit in reserve in case the boss asks you to take on a project or do this or do that. If you are working, you know, flat out, as some people are, obviously, at 100% with not a single discretionary minute in your day, that certainly is not the norm. But with Elon walking around, maybe it does, I don't know, just add the extra little frisson of danger, maybe. As per Bloomberg today, Elon told employees that they're having issues boosting output of the Model Y and that he'll be walking the assembly line on a weekly basis to help troubleshoot production snafus. In the email that was sent out on Saturday, Elon said this. I'll read it to you. I got a hold of a copy. I quote, "It's extremely important for us to ramp Model Y production and minimise rectification needs. I want you to know that it really makes a difference to Tesla right now. Model Y, especially General Assembly, is the top priority for both production and manufacturing engineering. GA4, which is General Assembly 4, is also top priority for facility improvements. For those working in GA4, thank you for bearing with tough conditions. We will get better, fast. I will be walking the line personally every week. We're doing reasonably well with SX and 3, but there are production and supply chain ramp challenges with Model Y, as is always the case with new products." End quote. Well, Teslarati reports the current production line where Model Y is being built, GA4, is actually the outdoor tent, for want of a better word, that sits at the Fremont facility. Model 3 used to be made inside the tent on that line, and that was being made at 5,000 of the Model 3s a week by the peak of it. Much like the Model Y's current roadblocks, Model 3 also had problems at the beginning and eventually had a successful ramp up to that stage. So there's a story there that would suggest they're desperate to ramp. They need to fulfill the demand that's out there. He wants the quality to get better, but actually they just want to get the cars made. Then there was a bunch of stories going around today all around the same kind of theme, that theme being Tesla Model Y must have weak demand. And there's two sides to this story. There often is. In a way, it's a bit of 2 + 2 = 5, because a thing happened and another thing happened, and therefore people are drawing a straight line between them, but that doesn't always follow logic. It's possible Tesla faces weaker than expected demand for Model Y, as the company has just added Model Y to the referral program, says Roadshow by CNET. Well, by seeing Model Y show up so soon after production and deliveries just started is surprising to many people. The concept of rewarding Tesla owners by referring another new buyer, and each of those parties get 1,000 miles worth of free supercharging station use. Hopefully enough current owners will persuade new buyers into Teslas to create more demand. In contrast to the Model Y's early addition to the referral program, Model 3 didn't show up until well over a year after deliveries had started. So plenty of people online today going, Model Y added to referral program, therefore no one's buying Model Y, Tesla are panicking. Well, I don't agree with that analysis of the situation. You look, the referral program is definitely a lever that Tesla can pull in order to stimulate demand, but bear in mind, the referral program is a different beast to what many people have in their minds. And the referral program in days of old could win you a car. If you referred enough people to Tesla and they bought cars with your code, heck, it could win you a Roadster worth $250,000. Some people won too. Well, they won't get those cars for many, many years, but you know what I mean? They're on the list for those cars. And so the referral program these days of 1,000 supercharging miles for both parties, they expire very quickly as well, by the way. It's not the beast that it once was. It's definitely something that you'd have rather than not have. If you got offered free supercharging, you'd take it, obviously. So I don't know if it has that bigger impact than everyone was running around like Tesla were on fire today and that they were panicking. But, you know, I'm sure you'll make your own mind up. I'm just not convinced by that particular analysis of the situation. They also added some solar roof tiles as well to referral program. So, you know. All right, moving on. Lordstown Motors is making good on its promise to unveil the Endurance electric pickup truck this summer, announcing that their maiden product will be introduced during a company meeting the week of June 22nd, video of which will be released to the public by the month's end. According to Autoblog, integration work has begun on areas like the body shop, general assembly, the motor lines, the paint shop, and demolition of about 200,000 square feet to make space for new lines to build the battery and motors. Well, the Detroit Free Press recently reported that Lordstown employs about 70 people. It's not a lot, but mostly engineers. About 20 of those are working in a design studio in Ford's backyard in Dearborn, Michigan. And they make clay models there of future possible vehicles, with the remainder working on the retooling effort. Well, the goal is to make 30 pre-production versions of the Endurance by the end of December. A quick note on an interview that I heard today. Mary Barra, who is GM's CEO, said that EVs won't replace combustion cars for several decades. She stressed that the shift is ongoing, but hinted that it'll be slower than many assume, according to Autoblog. On a show called Leadership Live with David Rubenstein, a talk show which is aired by Bloomberg Television, she said, "We believe the transition will happen over time. It will happen a little bit longer of a period, but it will happen." She could just have been in an interview saying it's going to take decades and maybe not properly thought about it, but I would disagree with her on that particular point. I think it'll happen quicker than decades. I think there's going to be a tipping point at some point, and whether that's going to be, next year or in 5 years, but there will be a tipping point. And just as nobody has a BlackBerry anymore, everyone's got iPhones and Android phones. There was a time when if you said, "I'm not going to have a BlackBerry," people would have looked at you like you were talking crazy. Okay, let's talk about Tesla's V3 supercharging. Not a particularly new story, but actually someone who I trust very much because he's owned EVs for longer than just about anybody else and knows what he's talking about, is a journalist called Tom Moloughney. And he knows that Tesla's V3 superchargers have been around a while now, delivering 250 kilowatts to Model 3s, but he hadn't actually himself recorded a charging session to look at the charging curve. And if you're new to the podcast, the charging curve, what we mean by that is when you plug your car in at 0%, it charges at a different speed to when it's at 100%, because the car slows down the charging speed to protect the battery the more full it gets. Well, Tom Mologney for Inside EV said, I had the perfect opportunity to test my own Model 3 this weekend, doing a 70 mile an hour range test on his 2019 Model 3. He wanted to drain the battery down to 0. Now, there's only one V3 supercharger in New Jersey. It's off the New Jersey Turnpike. And during the charging session, he did indeed hit 250 kilowatts. And he hit it for longer than I've seen some other YouTube videos. So looking at his Model 3, at 5% state of charge, it hits the maximum speed, which is about just over 1,000 miles an hour. 250 kilowatts, and it held that until 24%. That's really, really impressive. It's similar to how Porsche manages the Taycan's charging curve. Equally impressive on the Taycan. And it too begins to ramp down the power from when the battery is about a quarter full. While charging on the V3 supercharger, he says, I got to a 50% state of charge, so the battery was from 0% to half full in 13 minutes. That's got to be the headline for this story, right? 13 minutes and your battery is half full. It was still taking 120 kilowatts at that point. It took 28 minutes to get to 80%, and the charge rate by then was down to 54. So the Model 3 does hit the peak, but boy oh boy does it slow down, actually. And if you are going to go all the way to 100%, you're going to want to make some time for that, because it really, really slows down. It would have taken longer for the last 20% than it took to get to the first 80%. But it's interesting that those couple of stats came in from Tom, and I do trust his methodology. And like I say, he ran his car down to 0 as well. All right, moving on. The MG E-Motion is next in the news today. Presented in 2017, the electric coupe was expected to premiere this year. With the COVID-19 pandemic and MG's silence, maybe we were looking at a postponement. But the guys who found a patent image in China from MG has actually uncovered the production version of what will be the MG E-Motion, says MSN. With that, the new electric coupe, the front end lost a bit of character, looks like an Aston Martin actually. A dashboard image of the images show that the E-Motion will have a giant head-up display around the cluster. Flat surfaces suggest a massive screen for controlling everything: infotainment, aircon, the car's functions. And if the car can still preserve what they said they were going to achieve, 311 miles and 0 to 60 of less than 4 seconds, well, the MG E-Motion will be a very, very popular car. The MG ZS EV has been very popular in this country. It's a popular SUV crossover style. It's incredibly affordable for what you get for your money, and it's one of those cars that is not the sexiest. I don't drive the sexiest car, but it's certainly not one of the most desirable. But, well, it's on our shopping list. You know, it's one of those things that you look at having to put pushchairs and things in places, and you think, well, we haven't got the money to buy a Tesla Model Y, so this would get you a 44 kilowatt hour battery, it gets you an MG, it gets you good performance, it gets a good set of specs. The MG E-Motion is a very different kind of car. What we're talking about here is a low-down, sleek, electric coupe, but by the look of it, with these images filed in China, it is now getting a step closer. Headline story today is all about BMW and the iX3, scheduled to enter production in late summer, they said today. Well, the battery electric version of the X3, and I can't underplay how important the X3 is to BMW as a company. It's going to be, the electric version will be built exclusively in China, in Shenyang actually, and it's run by a joint venture between BMW and a local automaker called Brilliance. According to Motor Authority, the plant is currently building the pre-production versions of the iX3, and it will soon make the switch to customer examples. The iX3 and the regular X3 will both be built on the same production line. BMW will start deliveries in China and Europe later in the year, but not the United States. Instead, US customers wanting an all-electric BMW crossover will have to give it another year and get the i next. Well, the production version will come with a 74 kilowatt hour battery, which is lower, for instance, than the Audi e-tron. That's got 95. The Jaguar I-Pace has got 90 kilowatt hours, and it means the iX3's range could be lower than 200 miles if it were measured by EPA, which it won't be because it's not coming to the US. And it could be one of the reasons that BMW has decided not to sell the iX3 in the US. A real shame, actually, because I'm sure it'd be very popular with a certain BMW buyer who was coming to the end of their finance agreement, the end of their lease, whatever, and going back to their BMW dealer to go, right, what have you got now? I've had one for 3 years. The one I had before that was an X3. Before that, had an X3. They know what they like. They want another one. And it would have been great for the dealer to be able to say, well, hey, we've got this, but think about electric. Tell us how you drive and where you go, and this could be the next one you have. But not conversation to have until the iNext arrives in the US. I wonder what the range is going to be on the BMW iX3 here on the European test cycle. Looking forward to finding out. Again, like I say, very, very important car to the entire company. Let's talk about going racing with electric power. The Austrian firm Kreisel won the tender to produce and supply electric kits for the World Rallycross and their revised electric strategy. The introduction of the cars at the sports top level has been pushed back because of COVID, says motorsport.com. The four-wheel drive, twin-motor, 500 kilowatt kit is currently being built into Skoda Fabia's, the Skoda Fabia R5 chassis, in a collaboration with Baumschlager Rally, and that's run by three-time the Jana Rally winner and the Raimund Baumschlager. The kit will run a single-speed transmission. You will not be surprised to hear. These are electric racing cars, rallycross cars, doing single transmission, which is produced by actually a British company called X-Track. The battery, 52.65 kilowatt hours. Not the biggest, but weight is important with rallycross cars. And actually, you know there's a defined route you're going to be driving, and you know the energy that you'll be expending. And so it's the same battery that's going to be going into the World Rally Championships hybrid cars from 2022 and the World Rallycross Supercars as well. They said, we have our own charging system, which makes it possible to charge the battery in 18 minutes. I don't know if they mean fully charged, or they're talking about 80%, as most people often do when they say charging. It means in a normal service period of a conventional rally, maybe the car would be stationary for 20 or 30 minutes. In that time, in a normal rally stage, the car would be in a service park and the battery will be fully recharged each time. And so there's no comparison to ICE cars, right? That's what they didn't want. They didn't want special dispensation, or we need the cars to be off-road for 2 hours to charge. And so really no change there of how long the cars will be waiting to start the next stage of the rally. Moving on, and Germany's public network for EVs expanded by 10,000 charging spots. That's a 60% increase in the last year alone, according to Automotive News Europe, as part of Germany's stimulus package unveiled only last week. 2.5 billion euros, that's $2.8 billion, has been earmarked specifically to build out electric charging spots and battery cell technology. There's around 280,000 EVs and plug-in hybrids in Germany right now, although the public infrastructure is estimated to be able to cater for 440,000 cars at present and is continuing to grow. And a real quickie story at the end. UK Power Networks says their new electric vehicle charging surgery for the local councils, the local authorities, which our country is split into the different local areas, could save millions of pounds by matching where the local authorities and the local councils, in other words, the local administrators, those that might not necessarily have the best knowledge of electric vehicles because they're too busy planning where to spend the local money on things like essential services and all those kind of things, but they know that they need to put charge points into local areas. Well, by working with UK Power Networks, what they can do is match that with where the network capacity is. According to the website The Energist, UK Power Network said that the connections team will undertake for local councils a detailed analysis of exactly where the local areas want to put charge points, and then they will suggest the most cost-effective locations and alternative locations if they need to, because often with chargers, the biggest cost is upgrading the grid or the actual grid work. And if you can put chargers both where the drivers need them, but actually where the grid infrastructure and substations and things, I imagine, I'm no expert, but where there's capacity. For instance, maybe on a large industrial park or a trading estate where there's lots of industry, perhaps the local grid has been made more robust in that area. If you've got an area out of town where there's, maybe by a main road, but also where a load of factories are, or maybe all those factories are on three-phase power and they've got some pretty hefty power lines going out to that part of town, it could be much, much cheaper to build big charging stations there for the local areas. Just a great example of how people are working together for this EV future. Here we go with question of the week right now. So here's the question I'm asking you, and I'll read out your answers on Sunday. How far do you think a plug-in hybrid needs to go on EV power alone? Now, look, there's plenty of great pure battery electric cars coming, but there's loads of plug-in hybrids. So it's not all about pure battery electrics. It is about hybrids as well, plug-in hybrids. Wouldn't suit me. I mean, for me, I like having a full electric car, but I'm not going to be so... I'm not going to assume that model would suit everybody. So when it comes to a plug-in hybrid, and you've got to carry around batteries, you've got to carry around an engine, but you want to do a lot of miles on electric, what's the ideal range? Let me know. Email me hello@evnewsdaily.com, or you can leave a comment on the YouTube show. Well, thank you so much to 229 patrons of the podcast for your generosity, your support, allowing me to put this show together for thousands and thousands of people around the world every day. By no means do you have to, but if you want to, check out patreon.com, patreon.com/EV News Daily. I'll make the show for free for everybody, never going to put it behind a paywall or anything like that. It's too important to spread the word far and wide, which is why we do rely on people to pay for the costs of hosting and production and all the things that it takes to get this podcast on the air 7 days a week. Premium partners are Phil Roberts of Electric Future, Brad Crosby, Avid Technology, Brightsmith Group for clean tech talent, Porsche of the Village, Cincinnati, Audi of Cincinnati East, and now new Volvo Cars of Cincinnati East. If you can leave a little review anytime on Apple Podcasts, it makes a real difference and helps me grow the show as well, or even spread the word. If you can pass this on in a newsletter or a social media forum, just telling your friend about a podcast if they're interested in learning about EVs or just keeping up to date with the news. If they work in the industry or something, they haven't heard of this podcast yet, I'm sure there's lots of room to grow. Please do pass it on, and we'd love to get more listeners to the show. Have a wonderful day. I'll catch you tomorrow. Oh, do remember, there's no such thing as a self-charging hybrid.